Hello and welcome to the Catch a Lift Coach's Corner. I am Cal Coach Melissa, and this week I'm honored to welcome two amazing veterans to today's show, U.S. Army veteran Mandy Brazina and U.S. Air Force veteran Cindy Fajardo. Mandy and Cindy just participated in this year's Rubella Rally under the name Veterans United. Rubella Rally is the first women's off-road auto navigation rally raid in the U.S. Compass maps in an adventure spirit. Welcome to this week's episode of the Coach's Corner. Mandy, Cindy, welcome.
Hi.
Thank you both for being here.
Thanks so much for having us.
We're so excited to talk to you both, and I know we got a lot to get into, so let's just jump right in. I want to start by talking to both of you a little bit about your service. Mandy, will you start and talk to us a bit about your military service?
Sure. I joined the Army around 2002. I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. My parents were both Air Force veterans, and I saw that gave them really good direction and kind of a strong foundation as a start. So for me, my plan was to go Air Force. Didn't have great recruiters in the area, had better Army recruiters that were offering me the type of work that I wanted to do. So at the age of 17, I joined the military, had my parents sign all the paperwork so that I could officially be in the military. I served for 6 years, straight out of basic and AIT. I went to do a 15-month deployment to Afghanistan. So I knew that the military was going to give me that strong foundation and just kind of give me some sort of direction. And I am where I am today because of it. I really had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. I still don't know what I want to do with my life, but I had an idea of what was out there. And it gave me the ability to explore different things. So, and serve my country while I was at it. So it was really, really beneficial. So.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so very much, Mandy, for your service to our great country. Cindy, would you tell us about your military service?
Sure. So I grew up in a military family. My father was in the Navy. When my father joined the Navy when he was still living in the Philippines, and it was for him a way out. So growing up, my parents very much instilled in us, how lucky we were, right, to be living here in the United States, and just how much we owed a lot of that to the opportunities that were provided by my father, while he was in the Navy. So, the whole military thing, in a way, it was almost like expected, right?
Yeah.
I actually was like, nope, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to rebel, right? And then do things my way. But then after a while, it's like, and I don't know if it's much I didn't know what to do with my life. I feel like most of us, at least for me, what I want to do with my life changes as I mature, right? But we were living in Alaska, and I missed the travel.
Yeah.
And again, and I think I was also reaching that point where, and it sounds crazy, where I wasn't going to have an ID card anymore. So it was like, let me just see what this military thing is going to be like. If I don't like it, I'll just get out, right? But the process itself was pretty interesting as far as when she mentioned recruiters. I learned a lot from my dad, because he was like, when you go there, you tell them you want a guaranteed job. And that was a big thing of like kind of rebelling and doing things. They'll tell you, no, it has to be this. Anyways, I joined while we were living in Alaska. My first duty station was in Korea. So that was a bit of a, I don't want to say it was a culture shock, because I had lived in other countries before, but it was a remote tour. So I'm a little bit different. And then from then on, I went to, Space Command over in Colorado Springs. And then at the time, it was just time to get out. Life was taking me a different way. I had a 3-month-old. And then I ended up here in the Maryland, D.C., Virginia area.
Wonderful. Thank you so very much, Cindy, for your service to our great country.
Thanks for your support.
Absolutely. So we're really excited to talk to you guys about the Rubella Rally. Would you guys tell us a little bit, first off, what it is for, any of our listeners who don't know what it is? Mandy, do you want to talk to us about it?
Sure. So the Rubella Rally is an all-women's off-road navigation rally. You can take basically your car that's in your driveway. It's designed to take either a 4x4 car like a Jeep Wrangler or a Toyota Tacoma, or you could even take a Subaru Outback or a crossover. So you're basically off the grid for about 8 days. The event itself is about a 10-day event. It takes place historically in California and Nevada. And each day you're given a list of checkpoints that you have to go find using a map and compass only. At the beginning of the rally, they lock up all of your electronics. You declare what you have. They tape them with like tamper-proof tape. Each day when you return, you have to show that you did not open your tamper-proof tape. And so basically, while you're looking for these checkpoints, each one has a certain amount of points associated with it. Sort of like a ski run. There's green, blue, and black checkpoints that you can find. Green is a giant flag. They're mandatory. Blue can be a small like PVC pipe or a smaller flag. And then your black checkpoints are completely based on the terrain and knowing your location and distance and heading and everything. So there's no marker that you're looking for. You just kind of navigate to it. And if you're comfortable with the association of the map and your location, you click for the checkpoint. So by the end of those 8 days, whoever has the most points wins the rally. But it takes us to some really remote places. You're camping every night. And you get to see a lot of really beautiful things. So they usually take us through a lot of national parks and other locations. So it's really fun. They usually cap it around 50 teams. So the logistics of it for 50 teams is a lot with the amount of checkpoints. We're usually finding anywhere from 22 a day. So then you're assigned a certain amount of time that you can be out in your vehicle before you have to return back to your camp. And that's usually about 10 hours, sometimes more, depending on where we're going. So that's kind of the premise of the rally. So
absolutely incredible. How did you each kind of I want to kind of 2 questions. How did you each individually prepare for this event and then kind of together as a team? Cindy, I'll start with you.
So this was my first year doing it, and last year was much easier because all I had to do was root her on. And then this year I thought that would be my only role. Again, it's just rooting her on even more. But and she can go more into how I got into it. But I had, I think, about 2.5, 3 months to prepare. So a lot of it for me was just the one thing that I think I could contribute to, just based on some skill set that I had already had, right, without any kind of proper training, was just the navigation part of it. And I feel like for something like this, there's only so much mental preparation you can do, like not having really experienced it, having 3 months, and the 3 months includes like making sure you have the right gear, right? I think I did do like one training where we flew out to California, and that was more navigation training. But again, to a point, there's only so much you can do.
Yeah,
Because
right.
you don't really, for me, I didn't really know what I was really getting into. Surely I can hear from her what it was, but that's her experience, that's her take on it, right? What was for me, my concern was, and I think towards the end, I started to panic. I'm like, I am not ready for this. Like 3 months, and these people have been training for like, almost a year, some longer. And so it was really as much fine tuning and as prepared I could be as far as having the required materials.
Right. Thank you, Cindy. Mandy, talk to us about your preparation.
So this was my second year doing it. Last year was my first. So I was a rookie then. My teammate last year was a rookie as well. So it's without knowing what you're getting yourself into. Like Cindy said, there's only so much that you can do to prepare. Last year in general was just, every year is difficult. Last year was more difficult because of COVID and everything being shut down.
Right.
For a good chunk of the year, we weren't even sure it was going to happen. So they actually shifted most of their in-person training to online, which was really helpful. And they kind of encouraged that for this year as well. They had done a lot of Facebook Lives and whatnot as far as how to pack your vehicle, how to plot a point, how to, a little bit of everything, how to read a road book, which is kind of like MapQuest when you would print off directions, but a little more detailed in some ways. So for me, it was kind of rewatching some of those things. And I had made it a goal last year to write down like a 1-page summary of each day, because I knew by the end of
Right.
the week I would probably forget most things until
For
I started
sure.
looking through the photos, start looking through the journal. So for me, it was kind of, even though it was a really small 1 page, it was enough to refresh my memory and be like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. So my teammate from last year was going to do it again this year. She had a family emergency come up. So as Cindy mentioned, I think it was probably around to the end of May where she was like, yep, I can do it. So that it was a scramble to hurry up and get all of the logistics and everything set up. And then just kind of explain, like she said, my experience of the rally and kind of the expectations, which was not really anything I had going into last year. So even though Cindy was like, I'm not ready, I was like, you are definitely ready. I promise you're way ahead of most of the people that are there. So we have the benefit of being both located. We're like 10 minutes away from each other, and we work together as well. So we were able to do a little bit of practicing together and just kind of go over the things. And I could pull in some of my materials from last year and say, this is what you're going to get every day. This is how the day goes. So having somebody that was local was very helpful, especially with the time crunch that we had getting ready for it. So yeah, it was a lot, but we managed.
You guys did awesome, I would say. Cindy, would you kind of take us through what like an average day was like on the race? Like kind of from the moment you guys got up, what would a day look like?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's a little bit, I do kind of akin it to basic where you get up and it's a mad rush to get dressed, right? Get down there. Cause I mean, at least for us back when I went to basic, that dictated, right? Our chow runner to how are we eating first or are we eating last, right?
Right.
So similar to that. I mean, the cowbell um goes off at 5, right? But we got up at 4:30, and then it's the mad rush to the big tent so you can get a good spot, right? Which really meant getting a nice spot on the table so that you could have enough room for your maps and all your materials and everything.
Right.
And because for most of the days, not all, you didn't know what time you had to be in your vehicle, and you didn't get the materials until that morning of. There were a couple nights, I think during marathon nights, where we got the materials the night before, and so we could prepare. But in the morning, it was, I mean, there were days, most days, where you're not brushing your teeth until later on because it's more important to get there, right?
Right.
So that does kind of like remind me of when I was in Korea and we would just go deploy to the side of the mountain somewhere where, you know what? Yeah, normally brushing your teeth, it's appropriate thing to do, but not right now, right?
Right.
Yeah, you gotta start plotting because you might be the first on the line. I think for a few days we were lucky. We were like towards the end of it and we had a little bit more time. But then you throw in there that every other day you and most days you have to actually pack up because you're changing locations. So there's a lot of coordination. But then once you get through that and you get in your vehicle and you get off on the starting line and you're starting to look for your checkpoints, it's a bit of a rush, right?
I
But
bet.
also, and I've been trying to process it right since we've been back. It was a bit of a rush, but also in a way it was a little bit calming for me because I felt like this part I get. This part I know what we're gonna do. It wasn't, there was uncertainty, but it's like, no, it's pretty repetitive and I get this. And then it's like, for me, the next thing is gonna be, well, now we gotta make it to the finish line for that day. And then then I can eat and then I can, rest and I can do. So that's basically the gist of it. I mean, as you know, you get up, you prepare for it, you figure out what your challenge of the day is, you do as good as you can do, you go home, you eat, you rest up for the next thing, you do it over again.
Yeah.
I mean, she probably has other details to chime in there,
Well,
but
no,
from my perspective, that's kind of that's how I would summarize it.
Thank you for taking us through a day. Oh my gosh. I'm just like envisioning it in my mind. And I love that comparison back to basic, right? Where like, yeah, there's a time to brush your teeth right now might not be it. Like we got to move. And yeah. Mandy, talk to us a little bit about your experience. So like you said, last year was kind of, your year one rookie year doing the race. How did that compare to this year? Just kind of nerves, everything, your expectations. How did you handle this year too?
For me, this year the nerves weren't as present, but kind of your normal kind of like stage performance nerves were always there where it's like, oh gosh, we got to go out. Cindy and I would say are both kind of perfectionists. So we're like, we want to go out and do our best.
Yeah.
So compared to last year, it wasn't as overwhelming. So like I knew what Cindy was going through as far as just like trying to process everything and trying to figure everything out, because it is so much that's going on. And it's like in the mornings you usually have about 2 hours, which seems like a decent amount of time, but it's not, because you have a mandatory briefing. So it is very much like being in the military. You're getting a mandatory safety briefing. You've got to pack up all your gear. You got to make sure your vehicle's ready to go. So it was like, at least knowing what to expect was easier. So this year it was more focusing on the little things that I hadn't even thought of last year, because it's until you actually do it, you don't really know what to expect. So it was like trying to do better with time management, because over 10 hours, if you get way behind in the morning for everything in the afternoon. It was still a lot. And this year, like as I mentioned, last year being COVID, I think we had only about 36 vehicles last year, and they had 52 this year. So the logistics of just like more people in the area and a bigger staff, it seemed like there was a lot going on. But it was a lot of fun.
Very cool. Cindy, what was kind of your biggest worry going into the race?
Oh, I had a lot, so you want me to pick one?
What was kind of the big overwhelming theme that you were concerned about?
So really, I mean, I think one of my biggest concerns about not being prepared was what I took my role here was really, again, I was kind of just filling in, right? I felt bad because I didn't want. I mean, I went from rooting her on to now I'm a part of this.
Yeah, right.
And I'm like, oh crap, right? I don't want to be the reason why we don't do as well. And again, already feeling like I wasn't prepared, because but I watched her go through the, trying to figure out, when her teammate last year said she couldn't do it, and then her cousin said she couldn't do it, and I kind of watched her and I was like, oh man, what are you gonna do? Did not expect that she would ask me to do it, right? Yeah. So then it was kind of like, well, I don't know. I don't want to be the one why we don't do well, right? That was, I think, my biggest concern going in there. The other stuff, the sleeping in a tent, all that stuff, didn't worry me as much. Been there, done that, right?
Yeah, right.
Those weren't the things. I mean, I knew that they weren't going to be like the funnest things. Like who looks forward to using a porta potty, right? That's not it. But I mean, it's like I wasn't worried about those were not the things. It was am I prepared, and can I be the support that she needs me to be? That was my biggest worry.
And, so kind of sitting here now on the back end of that, Cindy, how do you feel looking back at that? Like, how do you feel that kind of all went for you?
So I do think in a way, she was right that I was probably more prepared than I thought I was, and maybe some of the people who had been preparing longer. I think now in hindsight, right, the things that I didn't mention that I had prepared for or were worried about, but now in hindsight, I think I would probably, if I was to speak to a rookie, prepare them for is there's a mental aspect of it that I think you don't really know, and even having been through the military, you're not prepared for. And while there are similarities, right, with the military as far as okay, we're all here. We're all here for the same thing. At the same time, we're competitors. In the military, we're here. We're be on slightly different teams. We do different jobs, but we have the same mission, and we're on the same team, right? So there are things that I think that mentally, for me, mental preparation is something that I think could do a little bit, could have a little bit more help, not just going into it, but this whole re-entry back.
Yeah.
Right now, which is crazy because it was only like let's say 10 days, but I think it was that it happened so suddenly. And a lot you're thrust into.
I was going to say the amount though that happened in those days had, I can only imagine it has to almost feel or have felt like a fire hose shooting at you right from all these directions and just so very much going on.
It is. And then having been detached from the military now, right, for some years,
right,
while there's, I think, always a bit of us that comes with and will always have with us, I mean, it's a change in your daily environment, right? And I think I did notice that as well with the other competitors, even the ones who, didn't have, right, the military background. I think for me, that's something that is not highlighted enough, is the mental aspect of the game, and that how that could affect the competitors, and I think in some ways could be triggering,
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
Military, not military, we have trauma, right? And there are things that could trigger that. And then how do you deal with that? And are you equipped to deal with that there? And do you even have the time to process it? And I think a lot of that happens when you come back out of it on the other end.
Yeah. Thank you for touching on that for us, Cindy. Next question. Again, I'm going to kind of pitch over to both of you. What do you both kind of, or, what was maybe your favorite or most kind of exciting parts of the race? Mandy, I'll start with you.
Sorry, I dropped out. For me, the most exciting part, I think I was really excited to share the event with somebody that I knew, because last year I had a lot of time with my teammate before. So, a lot of people got to hear about the event and how much fun it was, but being able to actually experience that with somebody that I know and care about was really cool for me. This year, I also was able to take my Jeep Gladiator with. We had used my teammates last year. So it was just really cool for me having the familiarity of someone next to me that I know, driving my own vehicle and being in a really cool place. Like I said, we got to go to a lot of really cool locations. We were in Death Valley for part of it, Titus Canyon, which I hadn't heard of before the event. But if you don't know what that is, look it up. It was a really cool canyon that we basically spent an hour driving from a really high elevation all the way through and finishing down in Death Valley. So I think for me,
wow. Oh my gosh.
and then being in a location, like there's very few places in life, I feel like, when you're in an area and everybody wants to be there and everybody's just like, you, because you associate like work or the gym or something, for the most part people are happy, but there's always somebody having a bad day. And like, even if you have a bad day out on course, just being around a lot of really cool like-minded people from very different backgrounds, sort of like in the military, maybe not in basic training, but in other things,
Right.
really hodgepodge mix of people, but everybody wants to be there and everybody's having fun together. So for me, that was really rewarding.
Cindy, what was the most exciting part of the race for you?
Okay. So I was going into it, I was really excited because I hear about all the sites and the beautiful sites, and having lived in both Alaska and Hawaii before, I feel like I've lived in two of the most beautiful places. So I was really eager to see the sites. Didn't know what to expect, right? And so the sites, that was really exciting for me. But, I'm not going to lie. The most exciting part for me was when we got the perfect score on one of our timed Enduros.
That's awesome.
That was a pretty big deal because I'm a little bit competitive. And, that day, because we had progressed, we had three of them. We had progressed from like 18 points the first day of 24, 23 of 24 the second day. And then that third day, we were just so determined, and we got the full points. And when you look at the end of the day and you look at the veterans who had been there and even the ones who were in the lead, and nobody else got a perfect score that day but us, I'm going to take that. Right. That's pretty exciting.
That's so cool.
Yeah. I mean, the people, don't get me wrong, meeting the people was pretty good too. But if I look at like this personal, like success for us, I'm just proud of that. That's all.
That's so cool. So very cool. How much or go on there, Mandy.
You guys go over the timed Enduros and what those were. So for everybody listening.
No,
yeah. Tell us about those, Mandy.
I brought it up, but go ahead.
Real quick, it's basically kind of those map quest things that I mentioned before. You have a distance and you have a speed, and you have to calculate at which point you should be arriving at what time. So you have to be good at math, you have to be good at communication. So you can drive anywhere from, I think we had like an 18 kilometer to, upwards of 30, 40 kilometers, where every spot you have to be arriving exactly when you should. So hopefully you're that same speed over time. So to put some credit to getting a perfect score on that was really hard. That was, I think, like a good,
that's incredible.
Cindy's constantly like communicating, like, this is where we need to be, this is, you need to go faster, you need to go slower. So those are like the most, I would say, the most adrenaline part of the whole rally, because it's just You're constantly communicating, constantly doing something, adjusting, slowing, but they're really fun. So, but it's a small percentage of the rally, but it's really cool that they do that. So
That's so very cool. Mandy, how much like contact on a given day did you have with the other competitors, or what did that kind of look like?
It kind of varies day to day. We're all in the Big Tent, as Cindy mentioned earlier. We're all starting there,
Yeah.
and we finish there with the exception of the one night where it's the marathon stage. They'll give you a location and say you can camp anywhere in this location, but everyone kind of hangs out.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that the founder, Emily Miller, really tries to do, she says that she likes to make you feel like you're lost in the desert. So even though there were, 52 cars and a lot of staff vehicles and stuff out there, there would be times where Cindy and I would be out in the middle of nowhere and not see a car for like an hour, sometimes more. So it was really cool that, a lot of us are finding the same checkpoints, maybe in a different order, but there's times where you're going to be out there and you're not going to see anyone. So um, a lot in the morning and the evening, and then it just depends on during the day. So
Oh my gosh, that's so cool, and I love the thought of that, or that's so cool to think that, I mean, they set it up like that so you have times where it feels like you're literally lost in the desert. That's just
yeah, and it definitely makes you question, like, are we in the right spot? I mean,
I would think, yeah.
know, but I haven't seen anyone else in a while, but I think this is where we're supposed to be. So
Oh my gosh. Cindy, do you feel like your military experience did aid you in this rally?
I, of course, right? I mean, there. How can it not when it's something your military experience? I think for most of us is something you take with you for the rest of your life. Yeah, it surely did, right? I mean, a lot of the training and the discipline. Although I do think for the type of individuals that would enter a competition like this, I think whether they have been in the military or not, do possess a lot of the qualities, right? That you see in veterans. Yeah, of course, it sure did. But to an extent, I do feel like, like I said, while we all had the same mission of like, you've got to get the most points, your competitors, right? Which is not something we hope not to have when you're in the military, because
Right.
we're all fighting for the same flag, right? So, but yeah, so it did. In a lot of ways it did. But I think that in some ways those lines were blurred, because I do think it takes a special kind of individual to even consider, joining a competition like this.
Thank you, Cindy. Mandy talked to us about what was it like having a good friend of yours to be able to do that with this year. Do you feel like that long-term friendship that you guys have had aided you both in this event?
yes, definitely. I think, especially from a communication standpoint, not only from a friend standpoint, but the fact that we work together as well. I think we talked about it during the rally. Like, we solve hard problems together at work. So this was just like solving hard problems in a different setting. Um, so I think knowing how to communicate to one another, because you do hear about other teams who maybe didn't get a chance to spend any time together. If they did, it was over the phone. So you don't really know what might bother somebody or what somebody really likes.
Right.
Benefit of knowing that going into that. We also had the benefit of we could speak our voice and know that it wouldn't hurt one another's feelings, which is also beneficial. So I think it was an advantage, especially last year, not really knowing my teammate going into it. And as I mentioned earlier, for me, just being able to share the experience with somebody that I know was really rewarding. So
It's absolutely incredible. I think that's just so amazing that you two were able to do that. The fact that not only you're good friends, you work together, and I can only imagine how that would have aided you, because just like you said, I mean, just when you have, I was a truck driver in the military, right? So I've lived, worked, everything with a person in a tiny box for days on end, and you can get on another person's nerves really fast and vice versa. So it really, really helps if you know that on the front end, just, little things throughout the day. Um, Another question I want to kind of pose out to both of you. Looking back on it now, you guys, I mean, you haven't had a ton of time to reflect, but we're a couple of weeks removed here. About looking back, what was the most memorable takeaway for both of you? Cindy, I'll start with you.
So for me, right? I mean, the whole thing, and there is a part of it that I think is still processing it.
I'm sure. Yeah.
What she presented me, what she gave me was this opportunity that I don't know that I would have ever just, taken on my own, right? So, and I'm going to be forever grateful for that, because I had always been like, I'm too old for that, I mean, because even before last year, she would say, she'll be encouraging you, go, you should consider that, you and so should consider that. I'm like, it's too old for that, right? I'm like, that's not going
Yeah.
to happen. So I appreciate, the experience, and I wouldn't have done it, without her, right? It just was, I would not have done it on my own. And so I'm going to be forever grateful for that. But I think takeaways is much like if you look back at your experience in the military and whenever you deploy, is the people that you meet, right? I mean, and I learned so much, and we moved around as
Yeah.
veterans, so we know what it's like to meet people. And so to me it really is the whole experience. It's the competition part is great, and you like when you do well,
Yeah.
but beyond the competition, right, it's the bonds that you made, and the memories and the sights, and we have these amazing pictures we'll be able to look back on and remember, and oh, we survived a sandstorm, did you guys know that? So it's like, hey, if this is it, at least I'm with my friend. But it's like the
It's
whole
so
thing for
cool.
me is I can't stop thinking about it, but I am still trying to process and compartmentalize how I feel about the different aspects of it.
Mandy, same question to you. What's your most memorable takeaway from the rally this year?
I think there's a lot of people that'll say the bad things are what you remember the most, and bad in the sense that the hardest parts for me were the best memories, because last year was such a fire hose, and I was trying to process
Yeah.
everything. The whole event is a lot of fun. But there were, being that it was my first year, we also didn't take as many risks because we were like, we've never done this before. We want to make sure we keep the vehicle safe. This year when we got to the sand dunes, which we saw a couple of times, but the really big ones, Glamis east of San Diego, we got really stuck. And then not long after we got really stuck, another sandstorm blew in.
Oh, jeez.
At that point, the amount of sandstorms that we had been in, one that was like 3 days before that one, and it destroyed base camp. You can jump on the Rubella Rally's Instagram page. I think they have it pretty well documented. Like, it was whiteout conditions, tent
Oh,
poles were
wow.
like, I heard him say like up to 100-mile-an-hour gusts. Like, it was no joke. So the fact that it was like, it was our last day. And the year before I hadn't gotten stuck in the dunes. This time I got stuck because we were taking some more risks. And the fact that the sandstorm blew in like right at that time, I was just like, we were
Yeah.
oh. But it made for some really cool pictures. Thankfully, I don't know how, but the photographers know whenever you get stuck, and they just show up and document the whole thing for you. Sponsors and stuff, like, we're using their gear. So thankfully we'll have to send you guys some of them, but there's some really great pictures of Cindy and I like trying to figure out how we're going to get out of this predicament, and
Oh,
it's
totally.
sand beating us and whatnot. So like, as far as like a single memory, that was probably it, but the experience of, as a whole is just really cool from so many aspects.
And this might obviously be too early to even ask you guys this, but do either of you or both of you have plans to participate again next year in the rally?
I'll always do the rally. I think it's a lot of fun for me. I played a lot of sports growing up and have always kind of been of a competitive nature, and it's hard as an adult finding something
Yeah.
challenging and whatnot. So for me, it challenges me, and it gives me the opportunity to travel, and it gives me the opportunity to be around a lot of like-minded people. So it's one of those things for me that I just enjoy that type of torture. Like, I have a few
Yeah.
friends that have a hard time and are like, you take time off to go do this, like, really hard, and not a vacation at all. And I'm like, no, it's not. It's like, it's fun for me. So, and it gives us an opportunity to do something different, get out west, and then also raise some funds for a cause like the Catch a Lift. So that was a lot of fun, bringing awareness to you guys too while we're out there.
Absolutely. And we're so very grateful for you guys for doing that. Cindy, do you have any intentions to do the Rebel Rally again?
So okay, I'm going to answer that in a few layers. I that experience again, completely it's just unforgettable, right? um I would love to do the Rebel again. I think that, that's different than will I actually do it? Um, I'm not sure yet. I mean, it's a pretty big commitment,
Yeah,
both financially, mentally, everything, right? I mean, it's not. I mean, there's a lot that goes into it because it's not just, oh, every October, or whenever they have to do
for
it,
sure.
you do it, right? It's there's a lot. I mean, because you commit to what is required, the preparation, the classes, which a lot of the classes are all over on the East Coast. So if you look at it practically and what's involved, right, is a lot of there's a lot of finances. There's a lot of, like, your how much leave and vacation time do you have, and who are you leaving behind for that, so, and then I balance that with, right, because I have kids, you know. So this money, what, I could do this with my kids, or this my vacation time, even I normally devote it to my kids. So to me, it's a lot, and I don't know that I'm ready to
Right.
to make, to fully commit, because it wouldn't be fair to say yes and then,
Yeah,
like,
right,
I don't want what happened last year to happen to her again, right?
right.
So yeah, but again, I think because it is my rookie year, I'm still. I know it sounds crazy. We've been back for a couple of weeks, but there's still parts of me that's still trying to process it and how I feel about it, and
Yeah,
um, it's helpful sometimes to talk to some of the other rookies, in a sense that, oh, I'm not as crazy because they're also going through similar things. It's been helpful to talk to some of the other veterans you know, who actually has said, what, I do think that we veterans could do better, right? At working with the rookies, taking them on and helping them, right? Both going into it and coming out of it. So it's nice to see that. I mean, I think,
absolutely.
yeah, it says a lot about the community of women that are involved. But yeah, I mean, I don't have anything that I'd say about the Rebella like that where I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't suggest
Right.
it.
Yeah.
It is a big commitment. And I think, one should not go into it lightly.
No, that makes complete sense. Cindy, I want to, um, what do you think, what would be your advice to anyone listening? And again, I mean, totally get you're still processing through this, but to any women listening, and it might not even be this rally in particular, but just, they're really looking for a challenge, but they might be a little bit timid, or they don't know if they have it in them for this next big adventure. Cindy, what do you say to other women listening that are kind of in that spot?
Yeah. So, what I'd say is, whether it's the rebel or some other passion you have, and in my case, where you've seen your friend do it and you think, God, that's really cool. Wish they had that in my time or whatever, right?
Right.
My thing would be is, you just start somewhere,
Yeah.
right? Just start somewhere. If it's something that you really are passionate about, start somewhere. Talk to people. I did not know there was a whole Facebook community, right? That I could have, hey, ping them for questions or just brainstorm and gotten advice, So there's resources out there. If you don't have somebody in your life right now who, shares the same passion, or understands that, there's resources. Facebook is always a good resource. Right? There's other ways where you can find a community, that supports that, and talk to people, and you'd be surprised how a lot of them are willing,
Yeah.
to sponsor, for lack of better terms, right,
Right.
and mentor somebody who, because they want to share their experience. But definitely, I think my thing is, the intimidation, while it's there, don't let it overcome, right? It's understandable, but don't stay in that place for too long. Like, start somewhere, take that first step, and because it's easy enough to say, what, I changed my mind, but just
For
start
sure.
somewhere and take a look at it and see if it's, and it may not be as hard as you think it is.
Right. Thank you, Cindy.
Mhm.
Mandy, you train at the incredible Box Blue Crab CrossFit in Maryland, who have been incredible supporters throughout the years of the Catch a Lift Fund. I wanted to ask you, how do you feel like CrossFit enabled you, either with confidence or skills to be able to go and do the rally now for a second year in a row?
Oh, in a lot of ways, I think. Loading up the vehicles every day with a lot of gear, being able to carry heavy stuff, it was a big part of it. But I think a lot of it kind of goes to the mental state as well. For any sort of working out or just doing something that's hard,
Right.
you have to kind of put yourself in a mental state to where you have to have kind of self-talk and convince yourself you can do this and work through it. So for me, CrossFit, any sort of workout that you do, you're always trying to have that mental conversation with yourself, telling yourself that you can do it and work through it. So I think for me, it prepared me both physically and mentally in a lot of ways. Community, we've talked a lot about that in this podcast. CrossFit has a really great community associated with it, and we're stoked to be having our 5th annual fundraiser for you guys this year. Here.
So incredible.
So like that community and the community support, like a lot of people were checking in and asking about it. So it was fun coming back to the gym and being able to talk to them about it. So it helped in a lot of ways for sure, because it was hard. I mean, we've also kind of mentioned how it's sort of like basic training in a way, the fun parts of basic training, where it's like very much a mental thing. And it's just like, 10 hours a day in the vehicle, 2 hours in the morning, an hour at night, at least, because it's basically like you have that 2 hours in the morning, you have that 10 plus hours in the vehicle. And then by the time you get back to base camp, you only have an hour to unload your vehicle, set up, turn your car into impound, because you're not allowed to go back to your car at night. So it's like, it can be very mentally and physically exhausting and draining. So having the endurance to kind of push through that and be like, I got this, I can do this. Like,
For sure.
Food and go to sleep, I'll be good.
Mandy, is that how you first learned about Catch a Lift, was through Blue Crab, or how were you first introduced to the Catch a Lift Fund?
It was actually one of our long-term members, Mary Rafter, came to us, and she grew up, I think, with some of the family on her street. So the Coughlins, and she reached out to us and was like, hey, there's this really great organization, and they happen to have started up in the Baltimore area, and I'd like to help organize a fundraiser. Do you think that's something the gym would want to support? Because I help out with a lot of the events at Blue Crab. So I was like, sure, it sounds like a great idea. So we looked into it, and that was, like I said, this is going to be our 5th year. So I think early on, like the hanging workout hadn't even been established yet. So we kind of came up with a workout that was based off of Chris's story. So when she brought that to us and kind of told her story and how she was connected with the family, we're like, oh yeah, of course, like, let's do it. Yeah. So it's all sort of around Veterans Day tradition for us now. So
oh my gosh,
it gets really involved. So
absolutely incredible. And we certainly thank Blue Crab for their many years of support to the Catch a Lift Fund. Next question, I'm going to turn over to both of you. Cindy, I'll start with you. Why did you guys choose the Catch a Lift Fund to be the beneficiary of the funds you raised from the rally?
Sure. So for me, right, I'm not in the CrossFit world as much as Mandy is. I usually am just a supporter, and I have heard a lot about the great work that you guys do through her and the fundraisers that they support. And I know that when we were looking at fundraisers, we wanted to, one of the goals was to hopefully find one that was local, and then one that supported veterans. And you guys do a lot of great stuff. So it was like, hey, we support this, so we should, that's who we should pick. And we're like, okay, she, probably has a lot more as far as like the background, because she is the one who introduced me, to Catch a Lift. And she's already been advertising about the upcoming fundraiser, right? So it's almost like it was a no-brainer for us.
Thank you, Cindy. Mandy, will you touch on that for us, the decision to pick Catch a Lift as the beneficiary?
Yeah, definitely. I think the only thing I would really add to that, you guys do a lot of really incredible work, and being that we were a team of veterans, I think we were one of the few teams that were veterans. The entire Rubella Rally, I think, only had 7 or 8 veterans out of the 104 competitors.
Oh, wow.
Small percentage. We're trying to get more involved with the rally, but for us, it was like, if we're fundraising for ourselves to help cover some of the costs, this is a really great opportunity to set a percentage aside. So 5% of everything we raised is going straight to Catch a Lift, because not only did it allow us to give back, but it allowed us to also bring more awareness to the Catch a Lift Fund. So we tried to do some posts. We talked to a few people, and I know we had a few more people from the gym reach out and just ask how they can get more involved. We have the annual fundraiser, but I want to do more. So anytime we can bring more attention to a really great organization. It was just a really good opportunity to do that, because at the Rubella Rally, they do give an award at the end of every year for it's called the Team Spirit Award, and a certain percentage, or a cash award, will go to a charity of choice. So a lot of everybody will choose a charity, but not everybody will always fundraise for a charity. So for us, like, look, if people are investing in us, we want to invest in someone else. So we thought it would be a really great opportunity. So thank you guys for all of your help and support.
Oh my gosh. Coming from me, but certainly, not just from me, on behalf of the entire Catch a Lift staff, all of our Catch a Lift veteran athletes, thank you both so very much, for doing that, for donating back to Catch a Lift, for spreading our mission. We are so very grateful to you both. I have one last question for you both today. Cindy, I'll start with you. What does it mean to you to be Cal Strong?
For me, I think the first word that comes to mind is perseverance. Right. No matter what you're getting yourself into, and work, personal, these hobbies or whatever, there are going to be challenges, right? And there are going to be a lot of times where you're going to want to give up, and and there'll be people who are going to doubt you. And I think it's just, you just got to persevere through that, and know, right, that you've done this, you can do this, you've been through worse probably, right? And just stick with it and believe in yourself.
Thank you, Cindy. Mandy, same question. What does it mean to you to be Cal Strong?
Cal Strong, for me, I think there's a lot of things that it could be, but for me, community comes to mind. It's bringing like-minded people together who have, had similar experiences, whether or not they serve together or not, but just a place to go, whether it's for fun or for support. Just having that structure and that support network.
Thank you, Mandy. That's it for this week's episode of Coach's Corner. We will return next Wednesday at 1 Eastern Time with another episode. Thank you so very much, Mandy and Cindy. Number one, for your service to our great country, and also for coming on today, sharing about your amazing experience and sharing both of your light with all of us. It was absolutely tremendous. Thank you so much. Thank you also for the generous donation that you're making to the Catch a Lift Fund. We are all very grateful to you. Thank you to ID Technologies for your support of the Catch a Lift Coaches Corner. Thank you to Lynn Coughlin, Henry Pomper, and Kaylee Nasiri for your work to make the podcast possible. And we thank the entire Catch a Lift team. Until next week, keep it real and stay Cal Strong.